The Marvel Cinematic Universe is highly regarded as one of the best franchises in all of cinema history, and I've never seen any of the movies. It wasn't necessarily because I thought that they looked bad or anything. It was just like, when the first few movies were coming out, I wasn't really into the idea of seeing a superhero movie, but then like later on when I saw more movies that intrigued me, it got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to watch like 20 other movies just to get this one. So I just kind of just didn't watch any of them. Also, when I was a kid, these movies weren't as big as I feel like they are now. Like, yeah, sure, they were big blockbuster movies, but they weren't like highly regarded in the mainstream media as like some of the greatest movies. So I just never really got interested in them. And then by the time that they were very, very popular in the mainstream media, I already missed like half of them. However, this is going to be a 4-part series where I watch each and every single one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. I'm going to cut it up by phase, and then phase 3 I'm going to cut in half just because it's a pretty long phase. And then obviously I need to rank these movies, so I'm going to do it in the most simple way possible. I'm just going to be putting these movies in a tier list. Obviously everything I say about these movies is just my sole opinion, but please, please, please don't be annoying in the comments. Don't hate on someone for liking different movies and not liking other ones, and like saying that like, hey, you're stupid for thinking that this movie was really good and this movie was really bad. Honestly, let's just all be respectful with our opinions. That's the beauty of movies. We all have different opinions. So let's get on to the first movie. So I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to feel about Iron Man going into it, but I gotta say this was probably one of the most incredible ways to start off the franchise. As somebody who like already kind of knew who Tony Stark was, it was pretty interesting to see his origin story as he becomes this hero that is very, very prominent in pop culture. One thing that really interested me that I actually didn't know going into it is that the Iron Man suit was actually created as a way for him to escape a terrorist organization, which I thought is a pretty unique concept. It's just him trying to be smart and trying to get out of a certain situation. And then later on, he uses that suit that he made out of like necessity and is using it to help other people. The basic storyline of Iron Man is that Tony Stark is captured by a terrorist organization and then realizes that they are using weapons that his company, Stark Industries, has created. He creates a suit in order to help him escape, which ultimately becomes the inspiration for the Iron Man suit. Upon returning home, Tony announces that Stark Industries will no longer produce weapons after seeing how destructive they could be in the wrong hands. However, his partner Jeff Bridges doesn't really agree with the decision, and it is later revealed that he is actually the one who sold the weapons to the terrorist organization, and he was hoping that they would be using those weapons in order to kill Tony Stark. Tony builds the suit to start helping other people, fights Jeff Bridges, who literally tried to kill him, and then he reveals in a press conference later on that he is Iron Man. There was a lot that I really loved about this movie, and it really did set a super high standard of what I was going to be expecting from the other movies in the MCU. A few things that stood out to me was the amazing job that Jeff Bridges did at playing the villain. Before the reveal, there weren't too many signs that he was going to be the antagonist of the film, and there were definitely points in the movie where I thought James Rhodes was going to be the villain instead of him. Also, I really like the dynamic between Pepper and Tony. You can see that these two people clearly love one another and are willing to do anything to protect each other. Like, Pepper continued to help Tony find anything on Jeff Bridges, even though she was mad at him. And then later on in the film, Tony continued to protect Pepper during his battle with Jeff Bridges. Overall, I really loved Iron Man. This was a great start to the franchise. And also keep in mind, these rankings can change depending on what I think of the other movies. But obviously, since this is the first one, I don't really have much to base it off of yet. So you know what? It's just going in the S tier. So I don't really remember much from this movie. Like, I remember a couple small things. The only big thing that I remember is that this movie was not very good. I think the biggest flaw with The Incredible Hulk is that it just doesn't feel like it's connected to the rest of the MCU. Mostly because it's Edward Norton playing Hulk instead of Mark Ruffalo. To me, it's kind of like if, say the Amazing Spider-Man films were connected to the MCU, and it started off as Andrew Garfield's playing Spider-Man, and then the newer movies Tom Holland took over, it just doesn't. Why did they recast? I don't know. Like, I don't know, maybe there was like some contract dispute or whatever. I don't know. It just didn't make sense why like the actor changed. This film is basically about Bruce Banner looking for a cure for his condition when he becomes the Hulk and he turns angry. He runs from the military and fights the Abomination. I really had to look all that up on IMDb. I don't remember a thing from this movie. I mean, some of the fight sequences in this movie were pretty cool. Like, the action scenes were cool. But, like, it wasn't a great movie. D tier. D is going to be the lowest one I'm doing. It's D tier. So before Iron Man 2 began, I heard some pretty mixed opinions about it. I've heard of people who liked it. I heard people who didn't like it. So I didn't really have really high expectations going into it. But on a positive note, I did enjoy this movie. Not nearly as much as I enjoyed the first Iron Man movie, but still, nonetheless, I did enjoy it. In this film, Tony is pressured to share the technology used in the suit with the military and other weapons contractors. Whiplash tries to get revenge on Tony after his father, Howard Stark, banished Whiplash's father to Russia. This douchebag sees Whiplash as a way for him to get access to Stark's weapons. And Tony has to deal with both these antagonists while also trying to keep himself alive as his glowing heart thing is poisoning him. I don't know exactly what it's called, but you know what I mean. Like the glowing heart thing that he has, that he needs for survival. I don't know what it's called, but you know what I mean. This was a decent addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There were some characters that I really liked, like Black Widow, who, as you know, becomes a bigger part of the MCU later on. I also thought that Whiplash was a pretty decent villain. Not as good as like Jeff Bridges, but like, you know, he was like a pretty fun villain to watch. Nothing special, but I thought he did his job. I think adding the element of Tony's heart thing failing him was a pretty good addition to this movie, because while he was dealing with Hammer and Whiplash, the two antagonists of the movie, he did have to slowly figure out how he was going to survive while his heart was failing him and pretty much killing him, poisoning him. Like, you know, you don't want to be poisoned. He has to figure it out. Also, speaking of Hammer, I really did not like this character that much. I don't know what it was. I just thought he was an annoying douchebag, which I guess was kind of the point, but like, I don't know. I didn't really care for him that much. It is what it is. Also, if I'm being honest, I'm kind of mad that they recasted Rhodey in this movie. Like, I know that Don Cheadle, who is the actor that takes over the role in this movie, I know he's the one that plays him up until Endgame. But it kind of annoys me when movie franchises do this, where they have someone in a role and then the second movie they recast them. I know, like, it's kind of the same thing like I mentioned with the Hulk. Like, I thought the guy who played Rhodey was very good in the first movie, and I really enjoyed him. And like, there's nothing wrong with Don Cheadle's performance, but like, I don't know, I just really don't like it when they recast someone. However, even with some of the flaws that I did mention, I really did enjoy this movie still. I didn't hate it. I didn't like love it, but I thought it was pretty good. So this movie is going to be going in the B tier. Kind of like Iron Man, I didn't really have any expectation going into this movie. Like I didn't really like hear anything about Thor going into it. And I will say I am a little disappointed with how much I didn't really care for this movie that much. I didn't think it was a bad movie or anything. Like, I thought it was a pretty decent movie, but I don't know. I just feel like I don't care for the fantasy genre that much. And like the first like 30 minutes of this movie is just like strictly a fantasy movie. And I don't know. I didn't really like it that much. Just personally, that's how I feel. If the entire movie was fantasy, it would probably have gotten a C on the tier list. But honestly, I feel like the movie picked up once Thor was on Earth or in the real world. I don't know exactly. I think Asgard's another planet, right? Or is it another like dimension? I don't know. You know what I mean? But like, I feel like it started picking up once like Thor was like in the real world. The first film in the Thor trilogy follows Thor when he is taken out of Asgard and brought into the human world. He falls in love with Jane Foster, who is played by the amazingly talented Natalie Portman, who teaches him what it means to be a hero as he battles his evil brother Loki. Like I said before, the fantasy elements in this movie didn't really intrigue me that much. I wasn't a huge fan. It wasn't awful. I just didn't care that much. However, after Thor was brought onto Earth, I really, really enjoyed the chemistry between Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman. I feel like they were really, really great together, and I feel like it was just a lot of fun to watch. I also thought Loki was a very well-established villain. He wasn't really like a strong force, but he was like purely evil, and it was fun to watch him because he didn't really like do anything like brute force or anything, but he was evil and he was willing to do anything he had to in order to get the throne. This was definitely not my favorite MCU film so far, but it was miles better than The Incredible Hulk. So, and also I did enjoy the real life stuff after Thor met like Natalie Portman. So for those reasons, it is going to be joining Iron Man 2 in the B tier. The first Avenger is another one of those movies that I really just didn't have any expectation going into it. However, I shockingly really loved this movie. Like, one of my friends told me that this was a controversial opinion, but oh well. Set during World War II, this film is about Steve Rogers, who is just a scrawny, tiny man who wants to join the army. He takes part in an experiment where he allows a scientist to make him super strong, buff, and a hunk using a serum. The scientist is then killed by a Nazi, meaning no more of these super strong men can be created. Because of this, Captain America is turned into a propaganda tool for the war. He also has a love interest throughout the film, Peggy, who is a British officer who is taking the war very seriously. At first, she pities Steve and doesn't really see him as a valuable asset to the military, but over time becomes more emotionally attached to him. After hearing about his best friend being captured, Captain goes out and rescues him. This is where he meets Red Skull, who, not gonna lie, kind of looked like a scrotum to me when I watched it the first time. Captain America and Red Skull battle in a plane that is going down. After Red Skull disintegrates, Steve takes control of the plane that is going down into a glacier and perceivably dies in the crash. A few moments later though, we see that Steve actually wakes up 70 years later in like 2012, 2011, whatever year it came out. Being honest, this film was really great from start to finish. I think what really made me enjoy this film so much is that it felt pretty different than the other films that we watched before. I was also happy to see that this film didn't feature that many fantasy elements because, like, as I said in the Thor part of the video, I just don't really care for the fantasy elements that much. I don't know if it's just me. Who knows? Maybe I will like them in like the next Thor movies. I don't know. I really enjoyed the relationship that we saw form between Steve and Peggy. It all felt very natural to me, and it just made me that much more sad at the very end when Peggy thinks that Steve died and, like, you know, like, she's not gonna see him ever again, and, you know, Steve is never gonna see him again. It just really felt very emotional. It definitely was not the flashiest Marvel movie, which I think is perfectly okay. It didn't really need to be that flashy. And you know what? This may be a controversial opinion, but I don't care. This is my list. Captain America, the first Avenger, is going in the S tier. Again, we have a controversial opinion. I didn't love the Avengers as much as I thought I was going to. Hear me out. I do really love the movie. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was very good. But my expectations going into it were like up here, and the film was like here. So like, it is mostly because it didn't meet my expectations, which I am kind of sad because I know like this is probably the most important movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I didn't love it as much as I felt like I should. This part of the MCU is the first time that we saw all the Marvel superheroes together in one movie, which is definitely weird to think about, considering how many Marvel movies have been made, and also considering Endgame exists, which has like 1 billion superheroes in it. It is crazy. There's 6 in this movie. We see all the Avengers come together in order to stop Loki from trying to take over the Earth. Also, the ending battle scene is so much fun to watch as we see them battle the Chitauri. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. Also, this shot here is so iconic. I wasn't even a huge Marvel fan before watching, and even I got chills while watching it. The one part of the movie that I did find pretty boring, which is kind of why I'm not going to be putting an S tier, spoiler alert, is that they pretty much spent about half an hour fixing a ship. That part just got kind of boring to me. I feel like it could have been like a 5-minute sequence that they stretched out to 30 minutes. I don't know. I didn't really care for this sequence that much. It just kind of bored me a little bit. Even with that one part, I still really love this movie as a whole. It is pretty cool to see how far the Marvel Cinematic Universe has come in just a short period of time. Like in 2012, it was huge for the Marvel movie to have 6 heroes in one movie, which is laughable now, I know. But like, it is kind of cool to see how far the franchise has come. If it wasn't for the fact that I just didn't really care for the ship fixing sequence that much, which was like a long time. Don't act like it was not a long time. If it wasn't for me finding that boring, and also the fact that my expectations going into this movie were just so high, this would have been an S tier movie. But because of those reasons, it is only going to be an A tier movie. I know, A tier, really? A tier? You're only giving Avengers the A tier? Are you kidding me? If I'm being honest, I was genuinely shocked at how much I enjoyed some of these movies. I just never really loved superhero movies as much as other people, and like by the time that they kind of intrigued me, I already missed like 20 movies, so I just didn't feel the need to watch it. However, watching these movies really helped me appreciate them a lot more than I did before, and I was genuinely excited to see the next one whenever I finished one. Also, some stuff that happened here in Phase 1 did actually help me understand more of what happened in Endgame, and I know I said I haven't seen all the movies, but like, you know, saying that seeing most of the movies for the first time and seeing a couple of them for the second time, it doesn't have as much of a nice ring to it to seeing every movie for the first time. So off topic, it did help me understand more of what happened in Endgame, which makes me like it a little bit more. I did really enjoy Endgame, but there was just like the few things like I'm like, oh, I don't understand what's happening here, but it wasn't like I didn't enjoy it. Like I said, this is going to be a video series, not just a single video. So next video is going to be Phase 2, which includes Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. If I had to pick now which movie I would be most excited for, it would either be Guardians of the Galaxy, because that would be the first time that we see new people or like new heroes in the series since like the first few movies, and also Winter Soldier, just because of how much I liked the first Captain America movie. And also I've heard great things about the Winter Soldier. Hopefully it reaches my expectations. My expectations are already high going into it, so I hope I really enjoy those.